You did not arrive at these words by coincidence. Some quiet compass within your soul has guided you here, at precisely this hour. When the screen goes dark again, you will understand why, for you have already tasted the mystery we are about to name. Think of those nights when life felt as fragile as a blown glass sphere, when one more disappointment would have shattered everything you called self, and yet, without warning, a subtle warmth, a perfect timing, a stranger's gentle gesture slipped between you and the edge. It was not mere fortune, nor a random sequence of events. It was an unseen current, moving with the exactitude of constellations, holding you upright while your conscious mind rehearsed defeat. Such protection never announces itself with thunder. It arrives in synchrony, like a soft hand steadied beneath fine porcelain, invisible until the moment you look back and trace the pattern. Then the realization dawns. You have never walked alone. In the pages that follow, we will explore 5 unmistakable signs that this higher power, call it grace, guardian energy, or the silent self, that Jung believed links us to the eternal, has been keeping vigil over your most tenuous hours, not by controlling the path, but by accompanying every uncertain step with intimate, unwavering presence. Sign 1. You've stood at the edge, and something pulled you back. There have been moments, perhaps more than you dare admit, when your hand hovered over a choice that could have rewritten your entire story, and at the last possible breath, something wordless pressed pause. Not logic, not fear, but a current that welled up from the chest like a tide, saying, "No, wait, not this." You didn't know why, only that something in you refused to move forward. You nearly made that call, signed that contract, sent that message, and walked into that room. And then, silence intervened. Later, time revealed what your conscious mind could not, that what glittered was not gold, that what felt like momentum was a mirage. It wasn't strategy that saved you, it was guidance, quiet, intuitive, precise. And when you look back, you see these subtle interventions scattered throughout your life, like invisible threads woven through chaos, redirecting you, not perfectly, but purposefully. You once chose a path you couldn't explain, drawn to a place or a person for reasons that defied logic, and then, somehow, it became exactly what your soul had been yearning for. It wasn't forecasted, it wasn't planned, but it was perfect in its timing, because the force that walks beside you doesn't operate in certainty, it moves in resonance. It doesn't demand explanation, it asks only for trust. The more you begin to recognize these invisible nudges, the stronger their presence becomes, like light swelling behind the curtain, the moment you stop denying its source. It's as though acknowledgement itself is the invitation, permission for this higher frequency to operate with greater clarity. No longer do you need to justify every decision with logic. You stop demanding immediate clarity because again and again, the delay has proven to be direction. The detour was protection. The silence was not absence. It was alignment. True protection doesn't shield you from sorrow. It does not erase the trials, but it does soften the fall. It doesn't spare you from learning, but it shields you from breaking. And while no one else may see it, you do, because you've felt it more than once. The quiet redirection, the whisper just before the collapse, the impossible coincidence that made everything make sense. You begin to realize you don't need to be in danger to feel it. Sometimes it arrives in ordinary hours, when you doubt yourself, and an external sign, just a lyric, a line in a book, a passing glance, echoes what your heart already knew, but was too weary to hold. These aren't random. They are the language of spirit, subtle ways of saying, "I'm here." You no longer need to understand how it works. You only need to recognize that it does. You've started to trust what can't be seen more than what can be predicted. You sense you're not meant to carry everything alone. Something, call it what you will, walks beside you, even in moments you feel most alone. And that trust didn't come from a book or an inherited belief. It was born from looking back and realizing how many times things could have gone worse, but didn't. How, in your most fragile hour, life moved in your favor without needing your command. This is not luck. This is not an accident. This is protection in its purest form. The kind that doesn't bypass pain, but ensures it doesn't undo you. The kind that doesn't control, but guides. That doesn't shout, but stays. And no matter how lost you felt at times, this presence was already clearing the next step. Not so you wouldn't fall, but so that when you did, you wouldn't shatter. Not to take away the ache, but to walk with you through it. That is what real protection is. Not interference, but a sacred companionship that holds you through your becoming. Sign 2. When everything falls apart, and a stillness you did not summon holds you together. There comes a season in nearly every life when the outer scaffolding collapses with the suddenness of a summer storm. You lose the contract that was keeping the lights on, the doctor calls with news that chills the marrow, and a marriage unravels in the span of a single, irreversible conversation. You stand in the debris field of plans and expectations, lungs tight, eyes burning, convinced you will not survive the night. Then, without warning, without effort, something settles over you like the hush that follows a church bell. It does not erase the crisis or anesthetize the ache. It simply anchors you, the way a steady hand on a child's back steadies the child's breath. You feel it rather than think it, a vibration behind the sternum whispering, breathe. This too is crossing, not ending. Years ago, a friend of mine, Michael, a quiet accountant who had built his life on predictability, walked into his office to find a termination notice on his desk and divorce papers in the mailbox at home. 2 blows in one afternoon. He told me later that he sat in the parking lot at dusk, hands trembling on the steering wheel, certain the weight of shame and fear would crush him. Then a peculiar warmth bloomed in his chest. No thought preceded it, no mantra produced it. It was as if an invisible presence buckled him into a seat of serenity inside the hurricane. He wept, not from despair, but from the softness of that unexpected refuge. A week later, a former client phoned out of the blue with freelance work that covered his expenses, and a therapist he had never met had one last-minute opening on the very evening his loneliness felt most unbearable. Michael swears the calm came first, and only then did the solutions emerge. Carl Jung would call that calm a visitation from the self, the deeper center of the psyche that carries the imprint of something larger than our personal story. When the ego is overwhelmed, the self slips forward like a silent guardian, not to cancel the lesson, but to ensure the lesson does not undo the learner. The mind may still scream, the hands may still shake, yet beneath the noise, a lake of still water appears, mirroring the sky within you. That stillness is not manufactured by positive thinking, it is granted by a field of meaning that predates your questions. It arrives when the fight is wrung from your muscles and you are too tired to pretend you have control. You have felt it yourself. Perhaps you were up at 2 a.m., the bills fanned across the kitchen table like accusation, heart hammering, palms damp. Then a single breath came, deeper than the rest, and a curtain parted inside. Nothing outside shifted. The debts remained, but you were no longer drowning in them. Or maybe you sat at a bedside during the final hours of someone you loved, and for one luminous instant, grief and gratitude fused into something that felt almost holy. That hush was not apathy, it was presence, arriving unannounced to keep you from being consumed by your own sorrow. Notice how this calm has a geometry all its own. It does not stand between you and the abyss to deny the abyss. It spreads like a translucent veil that allows you to see the drop without tumbling over its edge. Later, when the danger passes, you recognize the pattern. Each time despair gathered like a storm, a softness interceded, holding you just far enough from the brink to let the future reach you. That is why you trust it now. They know the difference between a calm you fabricate with willpower and the calm that is given. The first relies on control, brittle and exhausting. The second is vibration, belonging to a dimension that outlives circumstances. Over time, you learn that this stillness can precede the chaos as well as follow it. You wake on an ordinary Tuesday with an inexplicable peace, as though someone has laid fresh linen on the bed of your spirit. Only days later do you see why. The meeting turned confrontation, the diagnosis, the sudden move. It is as if the universe lengthens your inner runway before the turbulence begins. The calm is not emotional, not even physical. It is cellular, woven into the pulse. You have felt it in tears, in fury, in the moment you finally dropped to the floor and admitted you had no idea how to go on. And in that surrender, something vast and wordless unfurled through your ribcage, holding every jagged shard. Jung might say this is the protective face of the unconscious, a wiser nucleus stepping forward when the conscious mind hits its threshold. It asks nothing. It sets no timetable. It simply surrounds you until the psyche can reorganize. Gradually, you realize the calm is not a rare visitor, but a resident you ignored. You do not have to climb toward it. You have to yield toward it. A single exhale, a pause in the relentless search for answers, and there it is. Like a friend, waiting at a cafe, long before you arrive. Do not mistake this for resignation. It is sacred cooperation. When you stop fighting the storm, you become still enough to navigate by an inner compass you did not know you possessed. Problems may remain unsolved, but panic is replaced by clarity. Decisions emerge that were invisible in the blur of resistance. The circumstance has not changed, your frequency has. With practice, you meet the calm halfway. You close your eyes for 10 breaths in the grocery line, and the ground steadies. You place a hand on your heart before a difficult phone call, and something deeper than courage answers. You remember that the presence which steadied you on the hospital floor is equally available in traffic, in a deadline, in the subtle ache of Sunday evenings. Each return strengthens the bridge until you no longer need impending catastrophe to find it. You can rest there at will. This is protection, not an escape hatch, but an inner sanctuary that outlasts every falling ceiling. It does not keep life from breaking. It keeps life from breaking you. It walks half a step behind, never imposing, always ready. Others may not notice the shift, but you do. The sudden order inside while the external world remains unchanged. You could not summon it by force. It arrived when effort collapsed. All it ever asks is that small gesture of surrender. The willingness to be held by something you cannot draft or demand. In that embrace, battles lose their fascination, and you remember that peace is not the prize awarded after victory. Peace is the ground from which true living begins. Sign 3. The world begins to speak, in private codes meant only for you. Perhaps you have noticed it on an ordinary Thursday morning. The same line from a poem drifts out of 2 different radios. A stranger's t-shirt, and the headline of a newsfeed within an hour, all whispering the very words you had murmured in prayer the night before. Or you glance at the clock and see 11:11, just as doubt flickers through your chest, and a quiet symmetry of those digits seems to place its hand on your shoulder, steadying the pulse. To someone else, these moments register as forgettable coincidences, but to you, they land with the gravity of a sealed letter. Jung called such encounters synchronicities, a causal but intimate meetings between the psyche and the fabric of reality. Yet when they arrive in your own life, they feel less like theory and more like a hush moving through the trees, bending every branch toward your attention. A client of mine, Evelyn, 52 years old and raw from downsizing, found herself kneeling on her attic floor one night, sifting through boxes of childhood relics in search of any clue to the next step. Tears blurred her vision until a single photograph slid out. A snapshot of her 9-year-old self holding a paintbrush speckled with cerulean blue. She had not painted in decades, having traded turpentine for spreadsheets long ago. 2 hours later, scrolling half alive through social media, she paused on an advertisement for an artist-in-residence program located in the very coastal town her late mother had dreamed of visiting. She dismissed it as algorithmic chance until she stepped outside the next morning, and nearly stumbled over a discarded canvas leaning against her apartment dumpster, blank, but for a small streak of cerulean blue. Something inside her abdomen dropped and rose at the same time. Within a month, Evelyn was mixing colors in a converted barn by the sea, sold a painting to her first visitor, and wrote to me, "I'm terrified, reverent, and finally awake." The sequence made no linear sense, yet it unfolded with a precision that defied statistics. When the psyche is ripe, the outer world becomes a messenger dove. Phrases repeat, numbers echo, songs cue at the exact bar where the lyrics mirror your hidden question. A feather lands on the hood of your car after you beg the universe for reassurance. An acquaintance you have not seen in 20 years rings the moment you prepare to sign a contract you already suspect will confine your spirit. These aren't omens of superstition. They are mirrors polished by an invisible hand, inviting you to witness the conversation always underway between your inner landscape and the wider field of meaning. You do not summon them by willpower. They arrive the way constellations emerge when the night is dark enough. At first, you may demand spectacular proofs, lightning bolts that spell your name across the clouds. With practice, you recognize that the most delicate signals carry the deepest charge. A single dandelion forcing its stem through asphalt. A line overheard in a cafe that untangles a week of confusion. The way a dog pauses mid-walk to stare at you, tail wagging, as if greeting something luminous you have forgotten you carry. The logical mind may argue, but the body knows. Your skin chills, your gut loosens, your chest widens by a breath you did not intend to take. In that instant, something within you bows, because it knows it has been seen by the unseen. Not every sign announces its meaning immediately. Some embed themselves like seeds in the subconscious, germinating until the season is right. You learn not to interrogate the mystery with premature analysis. Jung advised patience, trusting that the psyche will decode its own symbols when the conscious ego can contain the revelation. So, you record the dream of the white owl even though it puzzles you, and 6 months later, when a medical result upends your plans, the memory of the owl descends with night-soft wings, reminding you that transformation often begins in darkness. Over time, this symbolic literacy becomes a second language, one that the rational mind cannot conjugate but the heart fluently understands. You stop asking the world to shout, a whisper suffices. A license plate bearing your grandmother's initials eases the dread on the way to a biopsy. A breeze lifts a page in the very book you closed days ago and lands on a sentence that answers a question you hadn't voiced aloud. You no longer belittle these moments as chance because you have felt the unmistakable jolt of recognition, the inner alignment that snaps into place like a compass needle finding north. There are stretches, of course, when the signs retreat and silence thickens around you. Earlier versions of yourself might have panicked, convinced that the guidance was gone. Now you understand the pause as a message in itself. You are walking in alignment, and the guardrails need not flash. Protection does not pander to our craving for constant reassurance. It trusts the maturity that grows between signals. The quiet is not absence. It is confidence. Thus your life becomes an altar without walls. Every sidewalk crack a potential hieroglyph. Every encounter a possible telegram from the deep. You do not require incense or incantation to maintain the channel. Sincerity of perception is enough. And when a week or a month passes without a whisper, you place your hand on your chest and remember Evelyn under the attic rafters, the photo, the blue streak, the barn by the sea. You remember the feather, the dog's quiet gaze, the owl gliding through the dream sky. He remembered that the same intelligence that choreographed those moments has not retired. It simply waits for the next note in the symphony of your unfolding. In that remembrance, your nervous system loosens its grip, and space opens for the next note to sound. This is the third sign of true protection. Reality itself bends toward you in intimate asymmetries, composing a dialogue beyond grammar. Its purpose is not to dictate your choices, but to illuminate the path you already sense beneath your feet. Each signal is a gesture of tenderness from the invisible, a reminder that the seen and the unseen are threads of a single tapestry, and you, perceptive, vulnerable, alive, are the loom upon which they meet. Sign 4 arrives without trumpet or headline, yet once it touches you, it rearranges everything you thought you knew about certainty. It is the awakening of an inner compass, so finely tuned that it detects the subtle tremor of a misaligned choice long before the mind can draft its pro and con list. Perhaps you have felt it as a gentle tightening in your stomach the moment you enter a brightly lit office that everyone else praises as the opportunity of a lifetime, or as a cool hush spreading across your shoulders when an old friend suggests a partnership that looks flawless on paper. That tension, that hush, is not anxiety or caprice. It is the psyche's radar, picking up on energies the intellect cannot yet decipher. It whispers, "Not here, not now," and the whisper is enough. Consider Daniel, a 50-year-old architect who had spent 3 decades designing other people's monuments while neglecting the blueprint of his own interior life. One afternoon, he toured a luxury development slated to make him a partner in his firm. The contracts were ready, the numbers dazzling. Yet, while the investors described glass facades and rooftop pools, Daniel felt a dull ache rise behind his ribs, as though his chest were shrinking around a truth he could not voice. He excused himself, stood alone in the half-framed hallway, and heard the echo of childlike wonder drifting up from a memory he had forgotten. The smell of pine in his grandfather's woodworking shed, the thrill of shaping something soulful with his own hands. Without fully knowing why, he declined the partnership, accepted the ridicule of colleagues, and 3 months later was invited to restore a historic chapel in the mountains, a project that married craft with meaning and reawakened his love for living wood. The instinct that said no to profit said yes to purpose, revealing a protection that cared more for his integrity than for applause. This guidance is not emotional in the volatile sense, it is vibrational, arising from a stratum of consciousness that Jung might call the self, that central archetype which holds our wholeness long before the ego can claim it. It does not shout or argue, it appears as a stillness in the bones, a pressure at the back of the neck, a surge of warmth that nudges you toward a doorway you had not noticed. You may not recognize its source, but you have learned, sometimes through bruising lessons, that ignoring it invites discord, while honoring it invites coherence. The mind insists on evidence, the body supplies revelation. There were years, perhaps, when you overrode that subtle nudge. You stayed in the relationship that drained you, because the holidays were approaching and leaving felt impolite. You signed the lease because everyone was moving to that neighborhood, and you feared missing out. The cost was not immediate disaster, but a slow erosion, fatigue that settled in your muscles, a restlessness that no vacation could soothe. These disagreements between intuition and action became expensive tutors. They taught you that peace is not a luxury, it is accurate navigation. Instinct is not only a warning system, it is also a homing signal toward what enlivens you. Remember the afternoon you stopped for coffee on a street you rarely visit and, for reasons beyond logic, walked into a tiny bookstore you had never seen. You found yourself conversing with a stranger about a topic that sparked electricity up your spine, and that stranger soon became a mentor who opened doors you had been knocking on for years. Such meetings are not random favors from fate. They are alignments orchestrated by a field that responds to authenticity like iron filings to a magnet. When your frequency rings true, life rearranges itself to sound the same note. This inner compass can be inconvenient. It may urge you to decline an invitation everyone expects you to accept, or to depart a gathering just as the party crescendos. Friends might ask for explanations that you cannot articulate without sounding mystical. Yet you no longer feel compelled to justify what your nervous system already knows. The body's calm is evidence enough. In those moments, you stand quietly rooted while the world continues its chatter, and you realize that sincerity with oneself is the highest form of loyalty. Over time, the voice grows subtler yet more authoritative. It might surface as a faint fatigue in environments that once thrilled you, signaling that you have outgrown certain rooms. It might disguise itself as sudden enthusiasm, urging you toward a risk that terrifies your practical mind, yet feels strangely inevitable in your soul. The more faithfully you listen, the clearer the signal becomes. The static of doubt fades, and decisions that once required exhaustive debate now emerge in a single exhale. Jung reminded us that true guidance never seeks to dominate. It collaborates with our freedom, allowing us to stumble when the lesson is richer than comfort. Even when you ignored the warning and ventured down a misaligned path, that presence did not abandon you. It stood nearby, lantern in hand, ready to accompany you out of the thicket, once you had gathered the wisdom hidden in the thorns. Such patience is the mark of genuine guardianship. It does not shield us from every bruise, it spares us from fractures that would sever us from ourselves. Nowadays, you feel the compass activate before your feet cross a threshold. A room either invites your lungs to expand or compresses them into caution. A new contact either brightens your chest with possibility or leaves a barely perceptible film of weariness upon your skin. You do not condemn the heavy rooms or the wearying people. You simply choose another direction, honoring both their journey and your own. In that quiet act of self-respect, the protective force gains amplitude, as though grateful to be trusted. What once felt like hypersensitivity now reveals itself as refined perception. Your field is clearer, and for that reason, it can no longer tolerate what is discordant. This is not rigidity, it is fidelity to the music of your own becoming. Each time you heed the silent yes or no, a deeper part of you whispers, "Thank you for not betraying us again." And in that whisper, there is an ancient reassurance. Protection is not a distant deity manipulating outcomes, but a living current within, directing you toward circumstances that mirror your truth and away from those that would dim it. So, when next your body tightens before your mind comprehends, pause, listen, feel the quiet logic of the unseen. It may lead you through corridors of uncertainty, but it will never lead you astray. The road it charts is not always smooth, yet it is unfailingly sincere, and on that sincerity your soul can rest like a bird upon an unshaken branch. Sign 5. The heart that refuses to seal. Picture Eleanor, a pediatric nurse in her late 40s, who cradled more than one fragile life, only to watch it slip away. After her own younger brother passed unexpectedly, colleagues expected the inevitable hardening that so often wraps itself around grief. Yet months later, they found her on the night shift, singing softly to a newborn, tears on her lashes but a warmth in her voice, wide enough to shelter the whole ward. She could have armored herself, many do, and no one would blame them, but something quieter, almost ancient, kept her open. In Jungian language, that something is the protecting self, an interior presence linked to the greater field of life, determined that the soul remains supple even when the world would turn it to stone. That you, like Eleanor, can still feel the raw pulse of sorrow without letting it calcify into bitterness is not naivete, but evidence of a subtler guardianship. It is as though an invisible hand has been cupped around your inner flame through every storm, allowing it to flicker yet never be snuffed out. The psyche that has truly been protected is not the one unscarred. It is the one whose scars have not closed over the wellspring of compassion. Jung wrote that wholeness comes when suffering is held, not when it is denied. In moments when betrayal could have frozen you or loss could have sealed your chest like winter earth, something intervened. Perhaps a sudden memory of kindness, a stranger's unexpected smile, or the hush of dawn light spilling across your kitchen table, and reminded you that tenderness is your native element. Your willingness to keep the heart ajar after disappointment is a spiritual signpost. It shows that pain has passed through you without rewriting your essence. You did not weaponize your wounds, you allowed them to widen your gaze. This capacity to remain soft is not a solitary achievement. It is the signature of a higher power sustaining you from within. Every time you choose to greet the day with an undefended gaze, you reenact the sacred contract between that power and your own becoming. You will continue to risk love, and it will continue to surround you with an invisible safety net woven of meaning, synchronicity, and the quiet resilience that whispers, "Your light was forged for far more than darkness." And that unseen strength did not shield you by building walls around your life. It guarded you by engraving a luminous memory into your soul. Each time your world fractured, a faint inner echo reminded you that the break was not an ending, but a threshold, that the hollow was not meant to erase you, but to empty you of what no longer belonged, that the loneliness was less abandonment and more an invitation to return to yourself. That whisper, the wordless counselor who appears when every other voice has fallen silent, is what has kept you intact. You recognize it too in the gentleness you instinctively extend to others, the patient way you sit beside someone who is splintering, the soft focus of your eyes when you meet a hurt that has no vocabulary. You watch without judgment because you know no one shatters by choice. You, after all, have held yourself together when no one else could understand what storm was raging inside. Yet, you did not become what wounded you. You did not hurl back the darkness that once pierced you. Such resilience is not manufactured merely by willpower. It is the fruit of having been accompanied by an invisible presence that refused to let pain rewrite your essence. You have learned that real protection does not mean the absence of feeling. It means the capacity to feel everything without drowning in it. That is your defining trait. Not the catalogue of events you survived, but the qualities you elected to keep alive afterward. Tenderness, empathy, sensitivity, truth. These remain unbroken not because the external world spared them, but because something greater sheltered them when nothing else could. The times you rose again were not powered by intellectual certainty. They were ushered in by a deeper guidance, an almost imperceptible nudge from the unseen. When your reasons for believing were exhausted, a stray gesture arrived, a chance conversation, a small sign you never asked for that allowed you to breathe a little deeper. None of that was random. It was the signature of protection. Often that presence carried you without your awareness. On those days when existence felt stripped of meaning, yet you still did not collapse. Looking back, you realize it was not logic that kept you moving. It was a heartbeat under the debris, the pulse of a larger life within yours, staying awake while you wandered. That inner rhythm never ceased. It is why you continue to seek depth, purpose, and connection, why the ache of experience never hardened you into superficiality, why the world has not muted your interior voice. Souls that have been touched by a higher power cannot stay false for long. Their very energy demands coherence. Even if you have doubted yourself or fallen silent, you have always returned to that place where everything feels real. Your protection was never theatrical, yet always faithful. It lives now in the grounded way you move through the day, with less need to explain, because you sense you are not walking alone. You have tasted what it is to be accompanied, even in silence, and have come to trust that an intelligence larger than the mind is guiding steps the mind cannot yet map. That, perhaps, is the clearest sign of all. You keep traveling with an open heart, aware that something travels with you. It demands nothing, punishes no one, abandons no soul. It simply reminds you at the perfect moment that you are woven into a wider design. However dense the world becomes, your spirit stays connected to a force that asks only this: do not forget who you truly are. Under such guardianship, you need not see the entire road to know you are safe, nor decode every turn to feel you are led. The invisible does not seek to impose. It seeks to accompany, and you, who can recognize its language in the silence that cradles you, in the calm that arrives unbidden, in the intuition that rescues you before you realize danger, know beyond argument that you are not alone. You are still standing not because you never fell, but because something within you refused to surrender, and that refusal was upheld by something vast and unnamed. It did not come to spare you from sorrow. It came to remind you that even inside sorrow, you can safeguard your truth, your softness, your soul. If something within this message stirred you, If even a single word mirrored your inner experience, I invite you to let your voice be heard in the comments. Have you encountered that soul whose presence feels like home, or are you still walking the sacred path back to yourself? Your story, however unfinished, may become the lantern in someone else's darkness, the very sign they didn't know they were searching for. And if someone close to you is silently struggling with the illusion that love must hurt, that self-abandonment is the price of connection, or that they are unworthy of peace, share this video with them. Help me reach the ones who need to remember. Real love does not demand that we shrink. True connection does not ask for sacrifice of the soul. And the most vital union we will ever form is the one with our own inner truth. Before you go, I invite you to subscribe and activate the notification bell. Here, in this space, we journey beneath the surface of things, exploring the hidden architecture of the psyche, the whispers of the unconscious, and how every relationship is but a mirror reflecting our personal evolution. If there's a theme, a question, or a wound you would like us to explore in future videos, leave it below. This space breathes because of you. Your voice is not only welcome here, it is essential. Thank you for showing up, not just to this video, but to your inner work, to the sacred labor of remembering who you truly are. And always remember this: when the right person appears, your soul will know, not through fear, but through peace. But until that moment, let your most intimate relationship be the one you cultivate within. That is the foundation, that is the home. And from that wholeness, all things real are born. Until next time, I'll see you on the path.